It's easy enough to develop a talent, right? Whether you're interested in a certain sport or maybe a musical instrument, with enough practice, you'll surely be able to become pretty good at it. Well, the same can't be said for these rare tricks. A lot of them depend on anatomy or genetic traits, and almost all of them are impossible if you're not lucky enough to have been built that way. Today, we put together a list of 10 weird things that almost nobody can successfully do. You might want to limber up before we start this video, because we know you're going to want to try out these tricks yourself as we go through them. But if you find out you can't achieve them, we'll give you another source of enjoyment to cheer you up: our videos. Before we start, click subscribe so when you finish trying to raise an eyebrow or contort your thumb, you'll have something else to spend time on. The paralyzed finger trick. Isn't it funny how much our hands differ? Unless you're ambidextrous and can write with both hands, chances are you'll be able to do everything with one and almost nothing with another. Try it. Unless you're extra special, we bet your handwriting is pretty terrible with your weaker hand. It's one thing we've grown accustomed to, which is why we usually always rely on one hand to pick things up for us, to write down important notes, or to eat with. But did you know that even your strong hand has some limitations? You might not know this, but the tendons in your ring finger and middle finger are actually connected. This might not mean much to you until you try out the paralyzed finger trick. Bend your middle finger and keep the others straight and put them on a flat surface. Try and lift each of your fingers individually, and you'll notice that you struggle to lift your ring finger at all. The reason for this is because each of your fingers has an individual tendon, except for those middle two. This isn't to say that everyone suffers from the paralyzed finger trick. There are a few people out there with especially muscled hands who can just about lift it without reshuffling their fingers, but it's a constant source of frustration for the rest of us. Licking your elbow. In the grand scheme of life, this isn't something that's going to cause you many issues long term. Unless, of course, you're someone who spills things a lot. If this is you, then maybe accidentally leaning on your spillages and having to wipe your elbow is a constant source of pain. But luckily, it doesn't happen to many of us. However, if you're in that small percentage of people, then you might be aware of how difficult it is to lick your elbow. Some might even say it's impossible. They're not wrong, but they're not far off the truth. For most of us, licking your own elbow is nothing but a far-off dream. The reason why we struggle to do this is simply because of how our bodies are shaped and our limitations when it comes to contorting our bodies. Obviously, your elbow and your tongue are on opposite sides of your body, which doesn't help matters when you realize you've just dipped half your arm in spilled ketchup. But while the majority of us are reaching for a serviette, there are a few magical people out there who can lick their elbows. These are the people who are either incredibly bendy or have longer or shorter arms, allowing them to twist in many ways that most of us cannot. Either that, or they've just got weirdly long tongues. Bend the last thumb joint. We like to show our approval by throwing a thumbs up sign at someone when they've done something impressive. It's a simple sign. You've likely done it 100 times in your life, and you probably will do it again. We can all do it, right? Yes, we can. But there are a few people who take it one step further and bend their top thumb joint even more. If you're anything like us, you're probably a bit weirded out by this and are wondering how this is even possible. We know you're about to do it anyway, but we do recommend not to try this one yourself. The reason why a few people are able to do this is down to hypermobile joints. It's not something you particularly want because as much as it's a neat party trick, it also means your joints are more likely to dislocate, which isn't something you want to experience at a party after all. Those who do have hyperextended joints can bend some joints further than most of us, which leads to weird looking limbs like these bent back thumbs. We know it looks cool, but maybe we'll leave this one out of our own repertoire for the time being and stick to card games instead. Raise one eyebrow. Is it just us who thinks it looks pretty impressive and sometimes a bit intimidating when someone raises one eyebrow? You're never sure if they're approving of your actions or giving you a little sign to back off or try again. Maybe you've attempted it yourself so you can throw back an identical eyebrow next time someone gets on your bad side. Chances are, you can spend as many hours in front of the mirror as you like, but you won't be able to successfully raise one independent eyebrow. Sure, there are a few select people who have this talent, and maybe they've successfully spent their days contorting their face in the mirror, or maybe it's just genetics. Supposedly, this nifty trick is hereditary, so if you spotted your parents pulling the face before, then you might one day be able to do the same. Others think it comes from practice, and from flexing your brow as much as possible in order to simulate the movement. According to these people, after enough attempts, you might be able to wake up one day and carelessly raise one eyebrow without even thinking about it. For now, if you're struggling, just stick with raising two. You might look a bit surprised, but it's almost as effective. We promise. Sneeze with eyes open. There's a very old rumor about this trick, which says that those who have attempted it have suffered with popped eyes, or at least incredibly strained ones. We're not sure how accurate this is because we've never seen it on the news or actually met anyone that it's happened to, but we'll definitely bear it in mind when trying it out. Most of the time when we sneeze, it's involuntary. You'll know this if you've ever done a loud one in the middle of class or when you're trying to be quiet. It's always the case. Once a sneeze is on its way, there's no stopping it from taking over your body. So it's strange to think that some people are able to take control from the sneeze and somehow manage to keep their eyes open throughout. We're not actually sure why they'd want to. How much are you really going to miss out on if you shut your eyes for half a second? It's a completely natural bodily reaction too. And if you've ever tried to sneeze with open eyes, you'll know it's incredibly difficult. There are a few people who can do it, but for us, there are greater talents to achieve, and we'd recommend practicing another one from our list rather than pressuring yourself not to blink. Tongue tricks. They'll tell you that it's inherited, that some people can wiggle their tongue weirdly simply because their parents can. But they're lying to you. In fact, the reason why some people can twist their tongues into strange shapes has little to do with genetics and more to do with individual characteristics. When you were younger, you probably spent a lot of time in the playground with your friends, competing to see who could roll their tongue into a circle, or who could twist it into different positions. You may or may not remember the satisfaction of being able to do it, depending on whether or not you're part of the small percentage of people who have the magical talent. Biological science doctors in Delaware have said that being able to contort your tongue is a complex trait, and that's why it's probably more down to individual talent than whether your mom can do the same thing. This same group of doctors has also said that the trait can be learned, presumably through the same mirror staring techniques that you'll need to try out our other weird talents too. No one is truly sure about the mechanics behind twisting tongues, but we know for certain it's to do with synergies between different muscle groups. Sadly, it's not one we can improve through any amount of heavy gym sessions. Tickle yourself. If there's one trick on this list that you'll be glad of not being able to do, it's this one. Everybody hates being tickled. It's an almost universal fact, and if there was a chance we could tickle ourselves, we would definitely try and avoid doing it anyway. It's common to laugh when you're being tickled, and you might wonder why. Surely, if it's something everyone hates, you'd cry rather than laugh. Laughter is reserved for happy feelings, is it not? Well, that semi-hysteric laughter is actually just that, hysteria. You laugh as a bodily reaction while you try to get away from the feeling, and it's difficult to control. One of the reasons why we hate being tickled is because we can't control the weird sensation and we can't stop it. When it happens to you, your brain activates the same reaction you face when you anticipate pain. This is why the idea of tickling yourself is so strange, because then you're able to control it and stop it yourself. If you've ever tried it, and if you're anything like us, then you probably haven't, then you'll realize it's not very effective. There are a few people who can bring on the same pain anticipation as they would if someone else tickled them, but most of us can luckily avoid this until someone surprises us again. Wiggle your ears. On the other hand, this party trick is something that you've likely spent countless occasions trying to perfect. Wiggling your ears has always been that one impressive trick, but also that one that makes you look more than a bit strange if you try and fail to do it. You'll know at least one person who can do it, and they'll take any opportunity to wiggle away for anyone who happens to be nearby. But fruitless practicing doesn't seem to pay off for a lot of people. The reason for this is down to science. The ear has a vast number of muscles which work together to create the wiggle, but only if you know which ones to move. As it stands, we're not skilled enough to be able to isolate individual ear muscles, so those who can do it have probably learned subconsciously rather than by poring over a science textbook. To make matters even more unfair, doctors have suggested that people who can wiggle their ears can usually raise one eyebrow too. So while we're over here frantically trying to achieve just one of these tricks, some people out there are natural masters at them all. Don't blame us, we never said life was fair. Put your fist in your mouth. We bet you any amount of money that the first thing you did when you heard that sentence was try and put your fist in your mouth. We know you're sitting there with your screen in front of you, saliva dripping on your hand as you listen to this video with half a fist in your mouth. Don't worry, you're not alone, and try not to get too upset if you don't succeed. This is another rare talent that only a few people can do, and as talents go, there are some we'd rather have than being able to put a hand inside of our mouths. But we'll take what we can get, and if we can't fly or read minds, then maybe being able to fit a whole fist in your mouth is the next best thing. We don't think we really need to explain the science behind this one because it's pretty simple. If you can't fit your fist in your mouth, it's probably because your fist is too large or your mouth is too small. There's not much more to it, and blame genetics or not, if you can't do it now, you probably won't ever be able to. Sorry to break it to you like this. Cross both pairs of fingers. Our last trick is something that has the potential to frustrate you for a very long time, so watch with caution. Let's start this one slowly. Cross a pair of your fingers. Wasn't that easy? you'll almost definitely have crossed your forefinger and your middle finger rather than your ring and pinky finger. So we've established that you can cross one pair, but can you cross the others? We're guessing not. You might be able to prove us wrong and show us otherwise. Can you? Try and keep the first pair crossed, and on the same hand, cross the other two fingers at the same time, with your pinky on top. We can feel how exasperated you're getting from here, and we don't blame you. It's definitely a weird trick to be able to do, and requires a vast amount of control, and some potentially damaged tendons in your fingers to accompany it. You'll be able to do this trick if you cheat and manually move your fingers with your other hand. So don't think you've won if you've done it this way. We're talking about people who can move their fingers independently into this position, without any discomfort or pain. Can you do it? Don't worry, we can't either. If anyone was watching you for the last 10 minutes or so, they'll probably wonder what you're up to, stretching your fingers and wobbling your tongue. Why not introduce them to this video so they can look equally as odd? We hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure to subscribe to The Hub before you go. Thanks, and see you next time!